Welcome to the European College of Neuropsychopharmacology podcast, where we interview the most interesting people in translational neuroscience.
Hello, my name is Silvia Bruzzone. I'm a PhD student in neuroscience at the Copenhagen University Hospital, and today I'm very happy to talk to Francesca Cirulli. Hi, Francesca.
Hi, hello.
So Francesca Cirulli is a research director at the Center for Behavioral Sciences and Mental Health in Rome, Italy. Her research focuses on the role of early life stressors and different lifestyle factors in vulnerability or resilience to psychiatric disorders. But she's also involved in many other science-related projects, and we will try to touch upon all of them in our conversation today. So to start with, I would like to ask you, how did your interest for science start? And would you like to tell me also something about your scientific career?
Oh, thank you, Silvia. Yes, gladly. I always remember the first time I thought about biology, actually, of starting a career in biology. I remember I was in Brazil. I was on a beach, and I was about 14. And I saw a girl with a book. It was a big biology book. I looked at the cover and I thought, this is really a fascinating subject. I would like to study it. And of course, this is just a suggestion, just an idea. But that idea synced probably, in my brain. And when it came to deciding which subject to study going to college, I decided to study biology. And again, there was a big conundrum at that time, whether I should study biology or study medicine. And my rational self said, well, if you go into medicine, it's going to be a very long time before you actually get a job. And I was really eager to leave home and to go abroad. So I decided for biology. So it's been a very rational.
That's a nice choice.
And in fact, I had in my mind very clear this desire of wanting to study also abroad. So when I finished my degree, my bachelor degree, I actually was able to get a Fulbright fellowship from the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And so I was able to go to the States and to do my PhD there. I was at Stanford, which was... but at that time was really a fantastic place to be. It was the beginning of the 90s, and it was an incredible time. It was the time, if you remember, you probably don't because you're very young.
No.
It was a time when Silicon Valley was exploding. So all these startups, Apple had just started, as a small company. It was... I could feel this energy. And it was, for me, it's been a totally transformative experience.
I imagine. So what was your PhD in Stanford about?
I went to Stanford also because actually I knew a professor there. Mm-hmm. He was a very good friend of my mentor in Rome, Guy Levine. And he was interested in early experiences. He studied early experiences. He was not a psychologist, actually. He was a biologist, but he was really interested in how traumatic experiences could affect the brain, the development of the brain. And he had shown very clearly that early maternal separation, so separating infants from parents, we are talking, of course, about animal models, about mice and rats, that might have very long-term effects on their behavior. And it was a very nice model at that time of how trauma could indeed be a risk factor for psychopathology. So this was really my thesis project. And what I did at that time was to test whether neurotrophins like NGF and BDNF would be one of the mechanisms that embedded the early experiences into brain function.
Fascinating. So what did you do after Stanford?
It's been an interesting journey. I even thought about staying, of course, but then I was lucky enough to get a job in Italy. I was still very young, and it was a real fortune to get a job. So basically, I've never been, unemployed in my life, which is good.
It's really lucky.
And so I went back to Italy, to my institute, and I continued doing the research that I started at Stanford. And it's been a very good time for me. I must say that I've been lucky compared to many young students nowadays that face a future which is not clear and a lot of uncertainty. When I got my job, it was in the middle of the 90s. Still, the future seemed very bright and everything seemed possible. Yeah. We had a lot of funding at that time in my institute. You didn't have to write grants. Can you imagine? I didn't have to write grants to do experiments. We had money just from the Ministry of Health. And so I was very lucky. I enjoyed this a lot. Then things, of course, changed for everybody. But for the first part of my life, it's been of my scientific life, I found myself very much at ease. And I didn't have to struggle like many young scientists, do nowadays.
Yeah. Do you have any idea of what exactly changed throughout the years? Why is it so complicated now? Is it because more people are studying biology, so there's more competition, or less funding, or other reasons?
Probably a mixture of all of this. So I would say that it's really a mixture. There's less money around, especially for brain sciences, neuroscience. What has happened is that there was a big hype in the 90s. There was a big hope that this research would have ended our problems in terms of, curing Alzheimer, curing Parkinson, but the cures has not arrived. And so a lot of industry has pulled off, and so that there are a lot of R&D that have been closing down, a lot of projects closed down. So in a way, neuroscience has become less popular, and funding has been shifted towards more promising projects. I think about cardiovascular diseases, cancer. And it has paid because compared to neuroscience, if you think about it, we are getting close to, at least manage cancer, if not curing it. So I think this has really been a big thing, the fact that we have not delivered really new medications. Think about, the last 30 years, we really don't have many new medications compared to, compounds that work on serotonin. In a way, there has not been an evolution in this field that has justified funding, being put into it.
Yeah. So do you think that a new scientific breakthrough in the field of neuroscience might motivate the funding agencies to fund more research?
I think so. What I really think is that we have to think out of the box. We really have to think about something different. And I guess we can learn a big lesson from cancer research. What has happened is that we're not fighting cancer by itself, right? But we are instructing our body to fight the disease through the immune system. And I think that this is a potentially very promising approach that could be also used in brain research. And in fact, we are seeing a lot of neuroscientists now turning into immunology or working with the immune system to actually fight brain diseases. So I think that there is hope, definitely, and but it really. And this is a message to the young scientists. It has to do a lot with a change in the way we look at things. We have to sort of shift our way of approaching this problem.
Interesting. And hopefully this will happen soon. But going back to your main research focus. So you mentioned that you have, at least at the beginning of your career, you worked a lot with neurotrophic factors as biomarkers for early life stress. Do you still work with them, or do you focus on other biomarkers?
Yeah, so this is a good question. Actually, I think it's a good example of how we can tell young scientists that they have to keep their eyes open for their data and what it tells them. For example, in my case, working on neurotrophins and stress has been really inspiring. It's been a very, very interesting research. But at some point, I realized that there was a need also to shift focus. And in fact, right now, for example, I'm concentrating very much on understanding how other stressors, like in my case, metabolic stress, could actually affect the brain. So the notion was that when we talk about stress, we're always talking about psychological stress. But my research has shown that there are other stressors which are very important that are not psychological. So, for example, metabolic stress, but they can affect the brain. And we know right now, for example, we are experiencing an obesity pandemic. So a lot of people that not just an increase in BMI, but a change in diet, which is towards an unhealthy type of nutrition. And that is, of course, affecting the brain. And what we've been showing, for example, is that metabolic stress, so a high-fat diet, can be a real stressor. So can change your behavior and can change your metabolism. And that is, I think it's very interesting because it tells us something about the comorbidity that sometimes we find between mental disorders and metabolic disorders. What we are showing is that there is a common mechanism between this, and it has to do with oxidative stress, which is in fact what we are studying right now. And why oxidative stress? So because always in the light of finding potential therapies, we have antioxidants available. And these antioxidants, for example, we're working with N-acetylcysteine. These antioxidants are very promising because they are safe, they are currently used, and there are a lot of clinical trials actually right now in psychiatry that are testing N-acetylcysteine as a potential treatment for a number of disorders from depression, bipolar disorder, and psychosis. But the important thing here is that we are not focusing on a single gene. We are not focusing on a single neurotransmitter. What we are trying to do is to focus on mechanisms which can be generalized, which cross boundaries between disorders, and have evolved in a way with us humans to protect the brain and protect us. So I think this is another message that I would like to share with the young scientists, that more than running after the new technique, you should really think about what are the most evolutionarily conserved pathways and strategies that the brain has to succeed. And I think that can be key also to find new treatments for brain disorders.
Yeah. Sounds like really interesting approach. I think also probably the most promising right now. Do you think that, for instance, introducing more antioxidants in the diet could be sufficient, or do you think that instead that would not be enough? We should instead develop new drugs that would serve this purpose?
Yeah, so thank you for the question, because it's really an interesting one from many points of view. The first one, antioxidants. We always think of antioxidants as good per se, but we know that oxidative stress is part of life. It's part of, something that occurs in our brain every day, in our body and in our brain every day. So we have to be really careful in using antioxidants, because a little bit of oxidative stress is probably good for us. So this is really the tricky part, to understand how much and for whom we should actually use this type of compounds. And this is part of what we call personalized medicine, because what we find also in our animal model is that if we give antioxidant to an animal that is not getting a high-fat diet, so a normal, your typical animal, that is not good for them. So it's only when the oxidative stress is actually elevated that you can, give antioxidants, and those are going to be effective. So it's really very important to understand how we can modulate the diet for whom, and in this sense also we are finding that there are really important differences between males and females in our animal model, and of course men and women.
Would you have any example about these sex differences?
Oh, yeah. What we find is that, for example, females are much more vulnerable to the high-fat diet when their mother is actually pregnant. And so most of the effects that we find is actually in females, which is really important for us because we know that for many brain disorders, so think about depression, for example, there is a clear difference in the incidence between females, and females are at least twice as much affected than males. So in a way, what we find in our animal model is, again, a specificity in the target of these adverse effects in females. And so it's really important for us now to concentrate on what makes a female being so affected. Of course, hormones are clearly the first target that you can think of, but then these hormones are going to interact with a lot of brain structures. And this is something we are actually going to study now, trying to understand why females are so vulnerable and in which way they differ from males, and why males may be vulnerable for other things, which of course are also important. For example, in the case of males, what we see is that they are much more vulnerable in terms of HPA axis activity. So the stress system is much more vulnerable in the males. And while all that has to do with emotionality and immunometabolism is more involving females. So we see these differences, and it's really important for us because they have also been reported in depression in humans, in clinical populations. I'm thinking about, the melancholic depression type, which is more typical of males, and the immunometabolic type of depression, which is typical of females. We actually were able to reproduce these two specific types in the animal model.
Oh, amazing.
So I think, I think this is really promising. We just published this data. And so it's we are really looking forward to study more in detail how we can find different typologies, different individual trajectories that can be targeted specifically, for example, with antioxidant, but not only.
Yeah, well, it sounds super interesting, and it's always nice to hear this evidence about translational research, not only from animals to humans, but also vice versa. So yeah, I'm really curious to see what comes next. So I saw that you have many different research activities, and I saw that you've also worked with pet therapy and even wrote a book about it. Would you like to tell us something about it?
Yes, actually, this is my hobby. It's a little bit of a hobby, but it's actually a very important part of my research. So I've always had a feeling for trying to do something which is also very practical and that can be immediately applied. Because when you do basic research, you work in the lab, and of course you know that what you're doing is eventually going to be translated, into some clinically relevant finding. But still, I always had a need to do something which was more easily applied to humans, to people that are in need, for example, emotional support. Here comes my background as an ethologist, or as a scientist that's always been studying behavior. And I was approached by people that were working, and we are talking about 15 years ago, were working with horses as not just for a sport, of course, but for therapy for people, especially young children with, for example, autism. And there were a lot of these projects going on, but there were no scientists looking at what were the results. And so that's what we did. We built a project, which was a multidisciplinary project. And with a scientific approach, we looked at why, for example, an emotional relationship with an animal like a horse combined with the physical simulation that the horse is actually giving, whoever is doing horseback riding, is going to be good for, both from a psychological but also from a therapeutic point of view. And we've done a lot of studies on this. We're still pursuing this. I still think that we have to be really thinking about caring. So medicine is not just curing, it's also caring.
Mm-hmm.
And the care, taking care of, whoever is in need is really something that we have to think about. Sometimes there is no cure. Let's think about autism. There is really not a cure for that. But what we can do, and in this sense, the animals can be really good, is to create a situation where this person feels comfortable, but at the same time, situations that can be used as a learning situation. And for example, in our studies, we have been showing that by working with horseback riding, young children with autism can increase their abilities, for example, their cognitive abilities. And I think this is a very promising line of research.
And about pet therapy, is it something that is commonly used in the clinical practice? And if not, why is it not that common?
I wish it was more common, but actually there is much more than we think.
Okay.
For example, right now we have a very nice project with the palliative care. So in Rome, we have a children's hospital, that's a Bambino Gesù hospital, and they have one center which is for palliation for children that are in great need of care. And we have introduced, for example, dogs in this center. And this is really good, not only for the children, but also for the parents and for those who work with them, because it is very stressful sometimes, and this alleviates a lot, this. So there are more and more clinical centers that are introducing animals to create a more, inclusive environment, a more soothing environment. And I think this is something that should be really more and more widespread. It would really increase our ability to also care and cure people if we are, also involved emotionally with them and alleviate, their distress. I mean, I've always been working with stress, so clearly this is something I'm trying to, work on also in a clinical setting.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about your research, but you're also involved in another project that has more to do with diversity and inclusion in the scientific environment. So you're part of this ALBA network. Would you like to tell us something about it?
Yes, with great pleasure, because this is, I think it's a really, really important initiative. I will tell you what it is, but first I would like to say that from talking and interacting a lot with young people, I realized that there is a lot of stress in their lives. And again, stress comes back as a red line between all the things that we've been talking about. There is a lot of stress in their lives. They are afraid of, how are they going to build their career? Where is their future going to be? Are they going to manage family and work? Am I going to find a job in industry? Or maybe, should I stay in academia? And who is going to help me with making these choices? I feel alone. I feel like, I don't really know where to go. So I think this is why at some point with a group of scientists led by Carmen Sandy, we started thinking through, what we could do. And there are times in your career when you are old enough that you can look at these things and say, maybe I should do something. And I guess it was the right time. So ALBA was founded within FENS, which is the Federation of European Neuroscience Societies. And ALBA is really the creature of Carmen Sandy. But I am really, in debt to Carmen for bringing me in this endeavor. And it's been growing real fast, and which tells us that there was a need for it. And now we are more than 1,200 members. And it's only a few years. So it's been growing and growing and growing. And I think I like the approach. The approach is a bottom-up approach, so that we don't. It's not that there is a group that decides, what the activities will be. Everything comes from the bottom, So everybody who participates can really bring forward what the activities should be and what type of problems should be faced. And we are now a very large group that is trying to handle many things that go from first of all, collecting data on good practices in terms of diversity and inclusion, but also sharing a declaration with big institutions so that they can enforce certain principles, general principles that have to do with having the same rights for everybody, taking care of those who are less capable or that come from backgrounds that don't allow them, for example, to build a career like others do. And we do many activities. Right now, we're really a global organization. We do have, and I know this because I've been working on this specifically, a series of webinars, global webinars, where we're trying to understand in different parts of the world what are the barriers to succeed in science, in neuroscience. We don't realize how much every country, every region has peculiarities that make it different. And so to tackle the diversity is it's a big effort, and you have to learn a lot about, what are the strengths and the difficulties that you encounter if you are in a certain place, or if you are a certain type of person, or if you come, from a certain background. We're trying to understand this, and we're trying to create a network. So I think this is really the key. Having a network, but really a net, a safe net, so that if you have a problem, you can always call someone and ask for help. And this is really the meaning of ALBA Network. And I think it is so popular because it is very inclusive, so that everybody can, join. Actually, I hope that many will join. And we're open. We're really open.
And also everyone can apply, right?
Absolutely.
It's open to anyone.
Absolutely.
Amazing. You have members from all over the world, I imagine.
From all over the world. I'm not sure, maybe 80 countries, something like that.
Okay.
So that tells you, how diverse we are. And we are really looking forward to accepting everybody who would like to become a member. It's really easy. They can go on the website and just fill out a form, and they, that's it. They're members. And there are different things that they can do. They can just be members without doing anything. And then they can grow up a little bit, climb the ladder, and, they could become ambassadors, for example, which means that they can be involved in some activities up to becoming, board of directors. So it really depends on each person, how much they want to get involved. And we try to, to fit whatever they can do to whatever we want to do.
Nice. Sounds like there's a spot for anyone.
Yes, absolutely.
And so, we've touched many, many topics with you, and sounds like you're doing a lot of different activities. Where do you find the time and the energy to do all these things?
Yeah, I ask myself the same question every day. I think I am a passionate person. I like doing many things. I like also doing different things because that gives me a lot of energy. I don't know if I have an ADHD trait. I've been thinking about that sometimes. But it is really a matter of being organized. And as scientists, you have to be organized. Yeah. And I'm also a mother of three. So as a mother of three, you have to be organized. So it's only a matter of organization. I guess you have to really want, to do things. And I don't know. Sometimes I feel life is so short. And I would like to do so many things. So, but I guess I'm in a good position. As I said before, right now I'm at a point in my career where I feel that I've achieved a lot, And it's probably the time now to help others to build their own careers. I've struggled a lot. And I think that I can really help others to maybe avoid some of the, errors that I made, but also give them the strength and tell them, well, you can make it. And I think this is really what's moving me.
Yeah, I think that we all need to hear that. Thank you. So I think you've already given a lot of very nice advice to early career scientists, but is there anything else that you would like to say to them to improve them growing as scientists?
Okay, I will cite my Stanford days. And I remember we had at the end of my master degree a commencement day. And there was a speech that was given that day by a woman who said, never assume a door is closed for you. And after 30 years, I'm still remembering that sentence, which is really the sentence that I would like to give you. You have to push the door. Never give up and never think, I cannot do it or this is not for me. You have to try it. And even if you don't succeed, which may be, still to try is already succeeding because, that will make you stronger for the next time. So I think this is really my philosophy that, you have to go for it.
Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid.
Amazing. Well, I think we got to the end of our talk for today. Thank you so much for all the insights that you gave us into research and all the nice advice that you gave us all.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thanks for listening to this podcast from the European College of Neuropsychopharmacology. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the interviewee and not necessarily the official position of the ECNP. And of course, this should not be the basis for clinical treatment decisions.